The first 7 ecumenical councils were called ecumenical because that meant the whole Roman world. They were called by the emperor and convened over by the patriarchs, the pentarchy, and what other patriarchs there were. And of course, Rome had to have consent, to provide consent, even among the Orthodox point of view, because that is they believe in this consensus-based system. So, of course, even that's how that explanation can subsume data about Roman reception, because of course the Romans would have to receive it. It has to be unanimously received in order for it to trigger the consensus-based system. And so then you have this famous line in Nicaea II where they talk about the Council of Hieria and why it was not considered ecumenical. And you also have the Robber Council right before Chalcedon. So those give you first millennium precedent for councils that weren't received. So you do have this issue of reception theory. There's reception theory in both churches. And let's clear up one thing, is that both churches were able to have councils that were equal to ecumenical councils after the schism. That's kind of sometimes something thrown around. The original 7 were Roman councils held by the emperor. So they're called ecumenical because that means the whole Roman world. So one interpretation would be that after the schism, the West can't have an ecumenical council because they don't have an emperor to convene an ecumenical council. And they had great general councils of the universal church instead. And the East has pan-Orthodox councils. But one thing that they all agree on is that those can sometimes have authority which is equal to an ecumenical council. The thing is that the East is not sure at this point, like which pan-Orthodox councils would be an 8th, 9th, or 10th ecumenical council. Some people are pretty sure there was an 8th and 9th in the Middle Ages. And the Catholic Church has just decided to go ahead and renumber the great universal councils as ecumenical councils, so they have a total of 21. So it's essentially just saying, like, yeah, these are all equal to, so might as well just call them that, even though there's more specific terminology, meaning Roman council. So reception theory. So at the Council of Chalcedon, Pope Leo invalidates the previous ecumenical council, meaning you have a papal invalidation, meaning there's a papal ratification theory. And the Hieria also seems to strongly suggest this, even if it couches it in terms of pentarchy. It doesn't say anything about the people receiving it. And then at Florence, you have another instance where you have to make an explanation, and that explanation is that the people didn't receive it. So that becomes the default Orthodox point of view, is that the reception theory goes through the faithful. And whereas the Catholics do accept some kind of like sensus fidelium, sensus fideium, but they don't consider that to be the end all, because that ends up with this problem, which you even have in the Catholic Church today, where they just like send out a survey to all the people and they find out what they want, and they guess that's the truth. And that's not really the way the Church handles, theological inquiry into settling disputes. So that's the Council of Florence is the main issue, because you have what seems to be ecumenical council or equal to ecumenical council making a definitive statements, where two churches sign on together to be one church again. Then the Eastern Orthodox split off after the fact because of popular dissent, meaning that the faithful did not receive it. And then that becomes the default explanation for all the other times, whereas history seems to say it was Pope Leo who rejected the Robber Council. and the other patriarchs accepted that veto. And then you have the Eastern Patriarch's response to the Pope in the early modern time. And that would just be, like as I said, just some bishops getting together. And if it all has to do with, so the ratification has to do with what changes it from just saints and even councils being wrong. So you have the Protestant line that popes and councils can err. And then you have the Orthodox line that agrees popes and councils can err unless they're received by the universal church, by the faithful, the sensus fidelium. And the question is about contraception, which has been rolled out by synods of patriarchal churches, Moscow, Constantinople, OCA, and essentially also, you might say, received by the faithful. And some people say that's going to be reversed in the future. The question, if you say something will be reversed in the future, is how do you know that other things declared by synods or whatever aren't also going to be reversed in the future? And then that points you to the response of the patriarchs to the Pope over those. Was that provisional thing that will be rejected and fixed by the Holy Spirit in the future? Well, you get something along the lines of popes, patriarchs, and councils are fallible unless it's received by the church, by the sensus fidelium, then it becomes irrevocable. So the 7 ecumenical councils were received by the faithful, so they're irrevocable. A lot of the other pan-Orthodox councils were received by the faithful, so they're irrevocable. And the response of the patriarchs to the Pope is also irrevocable because it was received by the faithful. So now you have a system of infallible consensus-based statements, which are irrevocable because they were received by the faithful. And a theory of why Florence wasn't received, and why this response of the patriarchs to the Pope must be received. And the thing is that that's just not the way it seems to have worked in the first millennium, so we need to look into that. Maybe it was, because Leo invalidates the Robert Council and deposes the patriarch. And the contraception issue does seem to throw into doubt how this is going to work. And it's possible that the patriarchs that responded to the Pope in the early modern period were just wrong and could be reversed, because maybe it's not just the sensus fidelium or the faithful who ultimately get the veto ratification power.